true you don't see many dwarf women. And in fact, they are so alike in voice and appearance that they're often mistaken for dwarf men.
It's the beards.
Dwarves. You know the type. Gruff, stout, industrious, long-bearded, booze and gold-loving characters. They are warriors, miners, smiths, jewelers and innkeepers. So the image of them is clear. But what about the sound? Well, it's obvious. A hard Scottish accent is the norm.
Oh, welcome! Come warm your frozen boots by the fire.
But why is that? Why do we associate dwarves with this specific accent? If dwarves are a product of fantasy, why do they mostly sound Scottish in movies, series and games? Because it wasn't J.R.R. Tolkien, as he didn't give his imagined races distinctive British dialects. Well, one reason is Poul Anderson's 1961 fantasy novel 3 Hearts and 3 Lions. In the story, the main character Holger is assisted by Hugi, a dwarf with a Scottish accent. And apparently, this book inspired the most popular tabletop game Dungeons & Dragons or D&D, which introduced dwarves as a playable race in 1974, inspired by Anderson's description. Now, I played a lot of D&D in my youth and even had a dwarven character, Vomir, as one of my favorites. But since then, other authors and game makers started repeating the stereotype, solidifying further and further, especially in many D&D books. So let's stay on the topic of games for a little bit longer. World of Warcraft, an MMO game released by Blizzard in 2004, influenced pop culture, TV series, movies, books, and even fashion. But before WoW, there were the Warcraft RTS games, which I played, and they laid the foundations for the fantasy world. The games were later adapted into 2016 Warcraft movie, in which I really enjoyed the dwarven portrayal.
Still good to see you, old friend. We'll have your wagons packed and on their way just as soon as they're ready.
In this first Warcraft game, Orcs and Humans, released in 1994, that game had no dwarven race.
Yes, my lord. Yes.
But they were introduced in the later games as a part of the Human Alliance.
Dwarf's ready. What do you want? Oh, aye, laddie. Okay, alright, move out. Yes, sir.
And yeah, they sound Scottish to that.
Oh, well, just the same, lad. I could use your help. My mates and I were attacked and we got separated. I'd appreciate any backup you could give.
And then of course other games follow with similar dwarven characteristics, like Zoltan in Witcher 3.
Next time I'll rip your fucking legs off and shove them up your ass till you've toes for teeth.
But it's not always the case. Dwarves Brock and Sindri from God of War were brash and blunt, but did not have the Scottish underline, possibly because the game is about the Norse lands.
I'm liable to chink my tools working on something so delicate and ladylike.
Then shingle it. Pattern weld the item with scap slag. Keep the layers thin. Alternate the overlay.
Dwarves in Dragon Age also lack the accents, but it's not as consistent.
Please, Master Volney. My work is accredited by the Shaper.
These books are lies written by the enemies of House Volney.
Because Varric in Dragon Age Veilguard has the accent.
And a lot of demons. Haven't seen this many come through the Fade in years.
But before these later Warcraft games and the Jackson's trilogy, not all fantasy dwarves spoke with the hard Scottish accent. So Gimli in the 1978 animated Lord of the Rings film has a slight accent.
My cousin Balin led a company of dwarves there many years ago. There has been no word of them in all that time.
But nothing like the live-action Gimli.
Except to look upon the lady of the Galadrim one last time. For she is more fair than all the jewels beneath the earth.
Or we can even go earlier to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Again, they have different voices, but not the strong Scottish accent we associate with modern dwarven fantasy lore.
The door's open. Chimney smoking. Something's in there. Maybe a ghost or a goblin. A demon or a dragon.
many people think it's because of Tolkien, but that couldn't be further from the truth.
The dwarves, of course, quite obviously. Couldn't you say in many ways they remind you of the Jews?
According to Tolkien wiki, Khuzdul, a dwarvish language, was inspired by Semitic languages and should sound more like Hebrew, giving it a different accent than Scottish. And in his letters, Tolkien said, and I quote, "At once natives and aliens in their habitations, speaking the languages of the country, but with an accent due to their own private tongue."
Thror's love of gold had grown too fierce. A sickness had begun to grow within him.
So it's interesting to see what prompted Peter Jackson to move away from dwarves sounding Arabic or Hebrew and go with Poul Anderson's descriptions instead, the Scottish dwarf we knew from Dungeons and Dragons. He used Khuzdul commands and shouts, but that's about it. It could have been because he wanted to give them Celtic characteristics too, and language and accent were one tool to do so, especially because these movies were in English. Dominic Watt, the senior lecturer in forensic speech science at the University of York, pointed out that modern high fantasy dwarves and Celtic cultures share many traits. He says that Scottish accents tend to be evaluated pretty positively. Shrewdness, honesty, straightforward speaking, and these are the sorts of ideas that the accent tends to evoke. Plus, the Scots like a drink, just like our dwarven characters. And all of these are much easier to recognize for wider audiences than if the dwarven race had an Israeli or a Hebrew accent, which would have been more accurate with the books.
Well, that's fucking shite! We miss a whole motherload of fun!
So we got a stereotype of a tough, resilient and direct character.
Tell this rabble to leave, or I'll water the ground with their blood!
The foul-mouthed and blunt.
If it isn't a white fucking wolf in a big fucking mouth.
Uncivilized, crass and rough.
This is our lucky day.
Oh no, dwarves.
The hedge pig I loathe most in the world lands right in our lap.
Come on, Beath. Is this how you treat a friend?
Oh, no, you puttock. This is how I treat a friend.
But there are some other good traits that our dwarves have. They are generally depicted as excellent engineers, the builders, not just warriors.
What is it? A mechanical marvel. It's a boomstick.
They are also friendly, they are hospitable, always ready to share a meal and a drink.
Soon, Master Elf, you will enjoy the fabled hospitality of the dwarves. Roaring fires, malt beer, red meat off the bone.
But they can hold a grudge for a very, very long time.
You know what this dwarf says to that? Ish kakui, aidorug nul.
So they are diligent, ambitious, intelligent, but at the same time they don't shy away from humor and festiveness. Always have a big heart.
And my axe.
Now, how much these stereotypes fit with the Scots and Scottish culture? I don't know, you tell me. But I visited beautiful Scotland a few years back and have nothing but good memories about the trip.
Typically takes you people weeks just to decide to take a shit.
If I may.
So for someone who normally doesn't think about this stuff too much when playing games or watching movies, if the Scottish accent is associated with dwarves, then their culture should have a connection to Celtic culture, which is a family of languages such as Irish, Scottish Gaelic, Welsh, Cornish, and so on. And yet, it is remarkable how much modern high fantasy dwarves borrow from Norsemen or Vikings, which languages are of the Germanic branch like Swedish, Norwegian, Danish and Icelandic. Dwarves appear most frequently in Norse myths, and Tolkien's description is remarkably similar to these Norse creatures. They are short, they're stocky but humanoid. They are miners, they're engineers and craftsmen connected to Earth by living in mountainous areas.
Ah, Frodo. Erebor. Built deep within the mountain itself, the beauty of this fortress city was legend.
They like the gold, yeah, and precious stones, and specialize in trades such as smithing, because they created Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, or Freya's necklace, Brinzigamen. Also, when we look at the dwarven languages, runes remind us of Viking runes. Although Tolkien didn't write dwarves as Scottish sounding, he did use Anglo-Saxon and Scandinavian rune scripts to create the runes of the dwarves in his works. So in the end we are in this strange place where the dwarven race, which originated in Norse and Germanic fairy tales, traveled across the ocean to America to get a Scottish accent from the American Poul Anderson, then migrated to England to get Anglo-Saxon treatment from Tolkien, and finally ended up in New Zealand with Peter Jackson, who put all these characteristics together on the big screen. Modern dwarves are inspired by the history before them. They dress like Vikings and they use Norse runes. Their secret language Khuzdul sounds Hebrew, but when they speak English they sound Scottish.
At this moment, the great tale of our age is being written.
I mean, it's fantasy. Anything goes. But it always leads back to Tolkien. And if you're upset about how we got to this stage, you can always switch to Polish dwarven dubbing. It is delightful. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. See you later.
Nie bój się, odbijemy twojego grajka, chyba że mu... Ach kurwa, ale bym zrymował, Geralt. Ale przydatnie nie wypada.
Wracaj do miasta.